You've heard the saying, life is what happens to us while we're making other plans. I had a plan, you had a plan, and then something broke, something changed. Your life took a turn that you didn't choose or predict. That's what happens here in Matthew chapter 2. Joseph had settled into Bethlehem, the child had been born, the census complete, found a house, the wise men showed up, brought gifts, they just left. Things were finally getting back to normal. But then Joseph is given another dream. And there's this new threat and another night of packing everything up, running away, fearful in the night. But it's here that Matthew starts a theme that he carries throughout the rest of the book. And the theme is this, that Jesus is not just the fulfillment of the explicit prophecies, but also of the prophetic pattern of the Old Covenant. Matthew presents Jesus as the faithful Son. You see, where Israel doubted, Jesus will trust. Where Israel wandered, Jesus walks in faith. This is not a random story of a couple escaping a genocide. It's here to show us that Jesus is the new Moses and that he leads a greater exodus. First thing I want you to see, number one, Jesus is preserved in peril. Matthew tells us this, "And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." So Joseph gets up and does exactly that. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. Again, the pattern that Joseph displays, no spotlight, no spectacle, no great sign. He's just a quiet, faithful man that moves when God says move. And was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. That quote comes from Hosea 11, verse 1. Now originally it was talking about Israel, God's firstborn son, rescued out of slavery in Egypt. But Matthew says that pattern is prophetic. Jesus is stepping into it, living it out. He's come to rescue and redeem. And he's the new Moses. Again, he's leading a better exodus. In your life, the question is, what if the detour isn't a distraction? What if it's part of God's design? We all want clarity and predictability, but life just isn't like that. What if instead of fighting our fate, being frustrated that our plans have fallen apart, what if we were looking for God's hand in the chaos? What if we look for what God is doing right now in our lives? Joseph didn't have to understand everything. He just had to obey the word he had. And so do we. Secondly, we see that there is pain in the pattern. Herod is furious. Look at verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and on all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. It's one of the darkest scenes in the Gospels. Matthew doesn't rush past it. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. That's from Jeremiah 31, verse 15. Originally, it described the Babylonian exile. Ramah was where Israel's sons were gathered up and marched away from their families. And that pattern is now being repeated, not with exiles, but with infants. What Matthew shows us is that God is still in control. God has counted even tragedy into his plan. Even in the midst of man's evil, God is still working. Jesus doesn't avoid the pain. He was tempted in all points, like as we are. He was born into a world where evil men kill children. He came to change that world. Grief is not outside the plan. God doesn't look away from our mourning. Matthew doesn't skip over Rachel's cry. He says it matters. It belongs. It's part of the story. It's part of the story of the Son who came to wipe away every tear. Jesus came to bear that burden. One day, he will put an end to that sadness. Finally, we see Jesus positioned for purpose. Eventually, the danger passes. Look at verse 19. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. So they returned. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Now, this one is weird. This one's different. There's no single verse in the Old Testament that says this word for word, that Jesus would be called a Nazarene. But Matthew's not quoting a sentence. He's pointing to a theme. To be a Nazarene was to be nothing special, ordinary, dismissed, despised even. Isn't that what the prophets said about the Messiah? Remember Isaiah 53? He is despised and rejected of men. It's all over Psalm 22, a reproach of men, despised of the people. Even Isaiah, when he calls him the branch, a netzer, a word that some believe ties to the root word of the town Nazareth, is describing a nobody. So yeah, Jesus grew up in obscurity on purpose. Here's what that means for you. Here's what that means for me. God is not afraid of the small places. In fact, he chooses them. Nazareth was nowhere until God stepped in. We don't really hear about the next 30 years of quiet obedience in Jesus' life. He was off-grid, being prepared. If you feel hidden, if you feel overlooked, slow to bloom, you're in good company. This is where Matthew's deeper story begins to unfold. It's not just about a child escaping danger, but a faithful son reliving Israel's story. This time he gets it right. Out of Egypt, through grief, into obscurity. Every step fulfilling what came before, but also preparing for the road ahead. Maybe your life has followed a path that you didn't choose. You feel like you're living in the middle of nowhere. Remember this: not one part of Jesus' story was wasted, and neither is yours.